studio in Vancouver, British Columbia, Canada. Your host of At the Edge, Boo Lamb.
Hey there, community. My name is Boo, one of your community evangelists with the DevCentral team. Thank you for joining us today on At the Edge. Very special show today. We will be talking about service provider, actually, which is a subject we don't really get into a lot on the DevCentral shows. However, service provider is a big part of what F5 does, and we have a number of solutions there. And some of those solutions are being announced this week over in Paris, actually. So we'll talk about that. I've got a special guest for y'all. Robin Mordasiewicz that I'll bring on in just a second here. But just wanted to remind everybody, we are streaming live right now from Facebook, on the F5 Facebook, a couple other Facebook groups, LinkedIn, and on Twitter and on YouTube as well. So if you're on one of those platforms and you're just discovering the show just at this point, we do a number of streams every week, and we have a lot of content around enterprise networking, automation, Kubernetes type stuff. A lot of helpful stuff that helps our community here at F5. And so if you want to subscribe to this, if you're on YouTube, at least there should be a subscribe button just kind of down here. So you want to hit that. Make sure it goes from red to gray. Hit the bell for notifications. If you're on LinkedIn, make sure you follow us on there. If you're on Twitter, make sure you follow us on there as well. We also have a platform that you can go interact with our community on, which is community.f5.com. We have tens of thousands of people on there interacting and chatting about not only F5 technologies, but all technologies on there as well. So that's a great platform to socialize with your peers on as well. Before I brought on Robin, just wanted to also mention we have a couple shows coming up on this Thursday. We'll be talking about Threat Stack, which is a recent F5 acquisition. We'll have on Peter Scheffler for that one to chat about that. And then coming up, we'll be talking about Security Sidebar next week on next Tuesday, talking about the Spring4Shell incident recently as well. And then a couple other things. We have DevCentral's blockchain part 2. If you recall, a couple weeks ago, we had on Kevin Jones, who gave us an intro to NFTs and blockchain, and we'll be talking about that on that show. So looking forward to that. If you're in the comments right now, or if you're watching from a platform right now, drop us a note in the comments. Let us know where you're watching from. Say hello. If you have any questions for our guest coming up today around service provider, please do ask. I know this is not a subject that everybody's into because not everybody works for a service provider, but you can learn about it and potentially could be a path for you as well. So all that being said, let me run a little segue here and we'll bring on Robin. Okay, well, that didn't work. So I'll just bring you on right now, Robin. How you doing?
Fantastic. Thanks for having me on, Boo. It's good to see you.
Yeah, likewise. It's funny. I didn't actually bring it up, but if folks have followed me before for a while now, let's just dive into a little bit of nostalgia here. But if folks have been following me for a while, I started live streaming, not on the DevCentral platform, but actually on my own platform, on my own socials, way back about 2 years ago at this point. And one of my first live stream guests was actually Robin on there, and you're responsible for all of the stuff you see here, a nice camera setup and nice audio setup. So Robin, you're foundational to how I ended up at DevCentral.
Yeah, that's interesting, because you've taken whatever I had learned and obviously taken it to the next level above anything I've ever done. So it's good to see that. The interesting thing though is, I think I probably felt inspired by you in the beginning because you were very aware of your social presence and using that to interact with customers. Seemed like a unique way to represent yourself as an SE to your customers in the market, and I thought that was wildly interesting, and I kind of learned from you, and I thought, well, to take what you've done and take it to the next step, I started incorporating video and visuals and stuff like that. And then you just, leapfrogged me on that. So it's always nice to have somebody that you can kind of like be co-opetition with and learn and share ideas. So thanks.
Well, I appreciate that, and I appreciate everything that you've done to help me with all of my things. And so it was a cool opportunity to bring you on because, hey, lo and behold, we've got some stuff kind of coming up with service provider coming out this week. But maybe, since I last chatted with you, Robin, you have a different role at F5. So maybe we can take a second to just introduce you, what you do at F5 before and now, and how that incorporates into what we'll talk about today.
Yeah, so I've been working in the service provider space for many years before joining F5, and I, started off working, building calling card systems and other VoIP platforms, and of course F5 was always an important part of any solution that we're architecting and building, and I just grew to really appreciate the product, and I loved it, and started doing some consulting, and then ended up getting a job at F5 covering service providers as an SE, and that's when we met, probably 10 years ago, maybe or so. I'm losing track of time.
Same.
But incredibly, one of the things about working as an SE is you're constantly working to be abreast of technology, and we've lived through, although I'm not sure when you started your career, but you're going back to Unix systems, whereas black boxes that are mainframes, and then going through LPAR virtualization, and then VMware virtualization, and these revolutions that happen in IT, and we're kind of there with every step. And I'd always thought, man, when is it we're just going to be like status quo? I can just like do my job and go to work, and it's not like a new day every day. And I thought by the time I get to this stage of my career, we'll sort of stabilize things. But lo and behold, we have this, this revolution that's been bigger than anything, called Kubernetes. That's everybody is a big part of.
Yeah. And that's been interesting too. We've on the back channel, we've been playing with Kubernetes and how it relates to the stuff that we do. Let me mention just for a second here, because we've actually every week we've mentioned a job opening at F5 just to help people if they're looking for something new. Not meant to poach anybody, but if you're looking for something new, maybe something to explore. Both yourself and myself have left vacant roles behind as we transitioned into our different roles. Yours is slightly different because there was a shuffle, but there
Yeah.
is still a solutions engineer opening in Toronto specifically.
Yep. Yeah. Not only I was reading this earlier today. There's the Great Resign is a thing, I guess, and it seems like there's a lot of people in many areas that have discovered new ways to work, and that doesn't mean they have to be tied to a specific location. So suddenly, there's a lot of people looking at their careers and making changes, but leaving openings and in fantastic jobs. And if anybody is ever thinking about it, I've loved working for F5 for almost 10 years now, and I couldn't imagine going anywhere else. So I would invite anybody that has any interest to apply.
Yeah, that's cool. So I will post this over in our community forum, community.f5.com. Also, a reminder, I didn't actually post it today. I'll post it after this, but I'll post a show thread with some links and inside of there as well. But if you head over to, let me blow this up a little bit, f5.com/careers, the two roles that Robin and I have left are still posted on here. You'll see them as solutions engineer. They'll say Canada home base, but you drill into it and you'll see the specifics of kind of where you need to be located. We do have, these are field ones, and so a field solutions engineer does go out and see customers, and you're working on larger accounts. But we also have something called a digital solutions engineer as well. That's more home based, and you're working with smaller accounts on those ones. But a couple jobs for folks to check out if they'd like.
Yeah. So I've been in marketing now since January. And whenever you change roles, there's a lot of ramp up time. And it's something that I'm used to, you're used to. Anybody who's in technology is constantly evolving. So when you change roles, you're learning a whole bunch of new things, and this is no different. It's a very big change for me. But not only is the industry changing, but our company has rapidly grown over the years, and it's not the same company it was 4 or 5 years ago for good reasons. And it's good to see that we are advancing and modernizing with the industry, and continuing to stay abreast and leading those changes. So, our careers have been, spent working with, when before we were SEs, we were technologists, practitioners, what have you. And I would spend most of my time building solutions that included multiple vendors. And as a customer, I had always, and I'm sort of getting to the nuts and bolts here already, if that's okay with you. But
Yeah.
as a customer, I always favored architecting solutions where a vendor's features were modular. So rather than getting locked into one vendor's closed ecosystem, we always favored modular companies that were interoperable, and that was sort of one of the key words of the past. And interoperability sort of meant the products had to have some form of way to automatically push configuration changes from version control systems, either through SSH, then running imperative commands or what have you. And that's had, really advanced over the years. And it's always been a big part of what service providers do, is automating things, whether it's shell scripts, Perl scripts, or whatever. But early on, F5 came out. We had a SOAP interface, which was, and now we have RESTful APIs, which are much more robust and advanced and ubiquitous. But we were one of the early adopters of this interface, where you could programmatically make changes on our devices, and that really made us a leader in being interoperable. And one of the ironies there is when a company comes out with an interface like that, it actually makes it easier for you as an architect to take that technology out and replace it with something else. And so the irony is that a company that builds mechanisms in to make it easier for them to be replaced is actually more favored than a company that is building mechanisms in to protect their stake in the network. So we always have to talk a little bit about history to understand where we are. But if as I said, if you fast forward through the evolution of those Unix systems that were closed and going into commodity hardware, and then the VMware revolution and the containerization revolution, which were sort of in the early middle phases of, F5 has been there every step. And one thing I'd like to point out about F5 is that we've always been leaders in modernizing platforms, and through all of that, we have a portfolio of products that is growing and growing. And one of the interesting things that we did many years ago is we sort of pivoted to sort of brand ourselves as a security company. And that was there was some debate and some emphasis and some effort that we had to do to change that conversation. But the profound change that we are experiencing today is that F5 has really become a bona fide Kubernetes company. So whether you want to debate about whether we're a load balancer company or a security company or an access company, this software that we have in our portfolio, there's no denying we are a Kubernetes company. We have our new operating systems run on our flagship chassis. It's all Kubernetes, right down to the entry-level platforms. Or I'm going to say Kubernetes probably 100 times during this, but and we've recently acquired a cloud platform, which we'll talk about. And guess what? It runs, several flavors of Kubernetes. And there's probably 1,000 sales engineers and solution architects and developers at F5, all working on Kubernetes. And so that's a really organic change that every single person has kind of made without being told to make, and the whole world is doing that. Every single person in technology, has been affected by this revolution. And so, we do have a problem statement, if you will. One, operators are evolving like the rest of the industry, through the 3G architectures, the 4G, and we're calling it 5G, and we use new terms, and sometimes in the service provider space we use different acronyms, but there's parallels to the acronyms we use in the enterprise space. So things like VNF we used to use in the 4G times, when it was virtualized network functions. And so we're talking to somebody in the enterprise, they might think, well, that's just a VMware image, a virtual image. So depending on who you're talking to, the language kind of changes a little bit. But
is there a reason for that? If I can pause you there, like, is there a reason why a telco needs to come up with a different acronym or term for it?
Well, I'm not. I think that the question is applicable not just to telco, but like every company is coming up with acronyms everywhere. It's just it's a bit of soup. So why do we do this? Acronyms, we just love them. I'm not sure why, but
Sure.
so one of the acronyms we are now using in the service provider space is CNF, and we'll kind of get into what that acronym means here. But the acronyms we used to use, VNF, virtualized network functions, and now it's containerized network functions. Sometimes the terms get interoperably changed with cloud native functions, or sometimes people call them essentially cloud native simply means that all your network functions that are they're containers, or they're running in a Kubernetes platform. And so when we hear people talk about having a cloud native architecture, it simply means all of their applications have been ported from virtualization platforms into Kubernetes platforms running containers. And that sounds like a trivial matter, but that's not an easy change to make, to go from virtual to containerization. And Kubernetes itself was developed to support HTTP-based applications, and so there's a bunch of things in the service provider space for protocols for VoIP or diameter that runs over SCTP that Kubernetes just does not support. And so you need some kind of proxy to get those protocols into your Kubernetes platforms. But guess what? We have, for the last 20 years, we've been the leading full proxy vendor in the market. It totally accepted. So we are the perfect company to come up with this service proxy for Kubernetes to enable these Kubernetes platforms to become part of the 5G core, or sometimes what we call a standalone 5G core. And that simply means we are cloud native as opposed to running hardware or virtual editions. What we're seeing today is there's all the large service providers are rolling out 5G radio access networks, but they're bridging it to the old evolved packet core, or what we call the 4G core. And so it's just now that a lot of larger vendors are starting to come out with standalone 5G cores, which is all Kubernetes. But in order to do that, you have to get those protocols into Kubernetes. Once you're in Kubernetes, now you've got a whole world of containers that you can start leveraging. Just one second, I just gotta close the door here.
Sure.
And so the journey begins with Kubernetes. We've got to get those protocols, the service provider protocols, into Kubernetes. So we've got our SPK product that we've had out some time. But today we are announcing the availability of F5 software running as containers, or to use the acronym, the service provider acronym, CNFs. So we're attending the MPLS conference in Paris this week, and we've got speakers on stage as well as a booth set up and some demonstrations and some videos of these containers running in OpenShift as well as our F5 distributed cloud services platform. And so the first CNF that we're making available is carrier grade NAT. So these are, again, traffic has to go through the service proxy to get into Kubernetes, but now we need containers to support all of the interfaces in the 3GPP spec. So you have to have some kind of way of doing a natting where you can log everything and be compliant. And so we will come out. So CGNAT is available today. In the coming quarters, the rest of our, not the rest, additional functionality will be available as containers. So policy enforcement modules. So when a subscriber uses some kind of user equipment and that equipment has what is called an IMSI is looked up, and there's a radius lookup, and we figure out how that traffic is going to be routed out the network, whether it has to go through optimization or other security chains and things like that. There's a number of other software modules that we've had for many years that do service provider functions that we will, in the coming quarters, make available as well. So DNS is also coming. Firewalling will be available as a container in Kubernetes. But I feel like we're sort of at the beginning stages of a profound revolution that is going to, introduces major changes. And so at times like this, you want to be a soothsayer and look into the future and wonder, have your finger on the pulse of, where we're going to be going. And that's difficult to do, but to, share some thoughts around that, F5 has grown rapidly as a company, and now we recently have added a global cloud platform, F5 distributed cloud services, and it's a Kubernetes platform essentially. And there are a number, it seems like, if you look at Microsoft, they are Kubernetes, they've got Kubernetes, Amazon, Google Cloud, but then there's a whole ton of like smaller vendors that are more boutique, Robin.io, or even if you're spinning your own cloud with OpenShift. There's a lot of different ways you can install F5 software on Kubernetes platforms, including our own cloud services. Now, the unique aspect of our Kubernetes platform, or F5 distributed cloud, is that you can install onto customer equipment rather than just running it simply in a cloud. And so, and we've been playing around with this, Boo, and it's a when you think about our flagship hardware running Kubernetes, and now we've got this cloud platform that can run on commodity hardware, but at some point it's also going to be able to run on specific hardware that is optimized for doing encryption and decryption right within Kubernetes. These are the kinds of ideas that we're thinking about in the future, and where it go. I have no idea where it'll actually go, but some things that come to mind about use cases is, customers can take a hardware, install it, running our CE or customer edge flavor of Kubernetes, install that right in the base tower of the radio access network, or in locations where you have, the immediate things that come to mind are large sporting events where you have 50,000 people, and you might have applications that are specific to the sporting event, and so video optimizations and other locally aware applications can be run closer to the customer. But you start thinking about other examples like farming and industry, mining, the automotive industry, any kind of like manufacturing is all going to be leveraging these automation systems that have to be available offline as well as being connected. And so you don't necessarily want to run your Kubernetes platforms in a cloud if you sometimes need to be disconnected from networks for security reasons or for reliability reasons. And then so many other ideas, like the point of sales, like even malls might have these customer edge equipments running Kubernetes and their workloads on those devices, right on those what we call edge networks. I'm trying to hold back from using too many service provider terms here, but and of course, in all of those edge installations, you can be running F5 containers. But like I said in the beginning, people are architecting solutions in ways where they're favoring interoperability. We don't want to build systems that are closed that other people can't insert their containers to. And so our cloud platform, not only will it run the F5 containers that we're talking about, it's also going to be able to run all of our competitors' containers as well. It's just really exciting to see what we have become and where we're going to go.
That's kind of neat. So, potentially a service provider, if they have, let's say they bought into all of the F5 CNF pieces, some of it, like, is it an architecture where some of it could run on the edge, but not all of it? Like, does it make sense to split off certain CNF pieces and just run those on the edge?
In some cases, yes. If you are so the 3GPP standards board defines all of the interfaces that a 5G network needs to support, and so there's a specification, and there are dozens and dozens of interfaces, and you don't have to use them all, but it's a predefined architecture, and you have to, as a vendor, you have to adhere to one of the functions, and it's well defined. And so if you're a mobility operator and you want network functions that are 5G specific close to the edge, it's a different kind of architecture than if you are the owner of a mall and you want to do augmented reality and you need compute on-prem. Either way, it's the same Kubernetes platform. The workloads that you're running on those might be specific to the use case.
Yeah. That's cool. I mean, it sounds like we have unlimited options, so I'm looking forward to that. I'm looking forward to seeing what people build out of this. Should be pretty cool.
Yeah. So we will have updates on our website with the new products, as well as solution overviews and videos of everything working in F5 distributed cloud, as well as OpenShift.
Very cool. Anybody who is over in Paris right now, hopefully you're checking out the conference and the announcements over there. But for everybody who can't make that, I'm glad you were able to come on, Robin, and share those announcements with us today.
Thanks. It was great fun chatting with you and jumping on here.
Yeah, we'll have you on again, hopefully in the near future to chat more about some of this SP stuff and get everyone up to speed.
Sounds good.
Awesome.
Did we fit everything into time?
We did fit everything into time. So from here, folks, I will. I have a few more announcements. I'll bring you off. Robin, and share those with everybody, and then we will go from there. And yeah, you can just hang tight in the background.
Thank you so much.
All right, thanks, Robin. See ya. Alrighty, so that was cool having Robin on talking about service provider. I think that's a subject that we need to touch a lot more on DevCentral Connects, on the live streams, on the videos that we have coming up. So we will make sure to do that, just in case anybody needs to get up to speed on that. You're looking for maybe an opportunity to look into those types of career paths, and this is one way to do that. Again, if you have not subscribed already, we are streaming to you live from Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, and YouTube. There should be a subscribe button down here if you're on YouTube. There's a follow button like way up here somewhere on LinkedIn and on Twitter and on Facebook as well. So make sure you're catching us on that. Upcoming shows, we've got this Thursday, Threat Stack. We'll be chatting about this new acquisition that we've made, and it's already in play in our platforms. And we'll have on Peter Scheffler, who will be sharing a bit of an overview on that and what to expect from that. Security Sidebar with Peter Silva. He'll be talking about I believe the API report, but also talking about the recent Spring 4 shell vulnerability with a special guest, Sander Vinberg and Malcolm Heath, I believe, as well, fan favorites. After that, DevCentral Connects, we'll be doing blockchain part 2. We'll be having Kevin Jones on again to talk about NFTs and all that fun stuff. And this time he'll actually be doing a demo of an application he hinted at last time with us before. And so he'll be running that, and that should be really fun to check out. All right, folks. Other than that, I hope you all can catch us on the platform. We're over at community.f5.com. We've got a new platform, all the bells and whistles, super fun place to be at this point. And otherwise, if this works, you should be seeing in just a moment here a little bit of a ditty from Peter. All right, safe community.
This week on DevCentral Connects, check out Threat Stack. Any kind of cloud could see. There is something in everything about you. Threat Stack was the most recent acquisition by F5 and is complementing F5's platforms already. But what is it and what does it do? Peter Scheffler, Senior Security Solutions Architect, will be joining Jason and Boo to share all this about Threat Stack. Please join us Thursday, April 7th, 9:30 a.m. Pacific to find out. The link in the description sets your reminder. DevCentral Connects is live every Thursday, 9:30 a.m. Pacific. Check out Threat Stack. You can blame it all on me.